Hey guys, this video focuses on how to use the APA referencing system. So it looks at what it is and how you can implement this in order to correctly reference the different sources that you use in your writing. Firstly, there are two essential parts of the APA referencing system. The first is in-text citations and the second is a list of references. Now, in-text citation refers to where you have referred to information from your research, whether this be through the use of paraphrases or quotations. Okay, so essentially that means where you have sourced information from somewhere else and included this in your writing. Now, the list of references is essentially the bibliographic information for each of the sources that you cite in your assignment. Okay, so let's begin by having a look at in-text referencing. In particular, paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is when you present ideas in your research that you have put in your own words. Okay, so you have taken the information from another source, but rather than quoting them directly word for word, you have put this into your own words. Paraphrasing is really good in order to show your understanding of another person's writing. Now, when you include a paraphrase in your response, you need to cite that you have got this from somewhere else. And in order to do that, you will use brackets, and within these brackets you will list the author's surname and then the year of publication, so when their writing was published, okay, and then end bracket followed by a full stop. Okay, so if you look on the screen, you will see some paraphrase examples. So the first one is when you identify the author straight away. Okay, so for example, Thompson and Smith. You can see here that in brackets there is 2003. This refers to the year that the work was published. Alright, so Thompson and Smith, 2003, concluded from their research that people's attitudes towards capital punishment are largely based on emotion. Full stop. Okay, so you have identified the author as well as the year of publication, so that is correctly cited. Alternatively, you may not choose to state the author's name within the sentence. Okay, so an example of this is managers spend most of their time on communication issues. Okay, we then have the author's name cited and the year of publication. Now, what is really important is that the full stop comes after the bracket. Okay, so after the cite, not before it. The second form of in-text citation is quotations. Now, when you use quotations, you are quoting or writing the exact words from the original source. Okay, so you are taking their work word for word. Now, when you use a quote in your writing, you obviously need to put this within quotation marks. Okay, now you also need to, within the brackets, okay, so include brackets to say that you got this from somewhere else, and within these brackets you need to have the author's name, the year of publication, as well as the page number or paragraph number. Okay, so if you got it from a book, you use the page number, but if you've taken it from an electronic web page or website that does not have page numbers, then you just need to say the paragraph number. Okay, and this will be identified in your writing by the word para, full stop, and then whatever paragraph number it is. Okay, so if it's a page, it's just a P, but if it's a paragraph, you need to write para. Okay, now if you look below, there are some quotation examples. So the first one, again, identifies the author immediately. Okay, so Smith. Alright, and 2003 refers to the publication date. So Smith in 2003 states managers need a detailed understanding of the communication process to be effective in the workplace. Now, you notice that the ideas have been placed within quotation marks. Because the author and the year of publication has been identified at the beginning of the sentence, only the page number is listed in brackets at the end, followed by the full stop. Okay? Alternatively, you may not choose to identify the author at the beginning of the sentence. And in that case, you would start with quotation marks. Managers need a detailed understanding of the communication process to be effective in the workplace. Quotation mark. Then you follow that with a bracket, Smith as the author, 2003 as the publication date, and the page number because it is a quotation. Now you notice that within both of these citations, it is a P followed by a full stop, a space, and then the page number, end bracket, full stop. Okay, so it's really, really important that your references are correctly formatted. Okay, so use these examples as your guide. Okay, but what if your source has multiple authors? Okay, if the reference that you are getting your information from has multiple authors, then the referencing can be slightly different in terms of addressing the authors. Okay, so if you have authors for 3 to 5 authors for one book, then for the first citation in your response, you need to cite all authors the first time. Okay, so an example of this might be Smith, Jones, and Gallagher. 2003. Okay. However, once you have done that for the first time, you only need to cite the surname of the first author followed by et al. Okay, so for example, it would be first author, which is Smith, et al. Okay, now notice that I have a full stop after the al. Okay, then the end bracket. Okay, now if you have more than 6 authors, then you do not need to write all of these authors within your response. Okay, so in text referencing, it's too much. Okay, so all you need to do for the first and however many times you reference them is write the first surname, so Smith, followed by et al, full stop, end bracket. Okay, so obviously you'll put the year of publication in there as well, but that's just an example of how your references should appear when you are dealing with more than 2 authors. Okay, if you only have 2 authors, then it would be Smith and Jones, and you would reference those 2 authors repeatedly within your response. So just to clarify your understanding of multiple authors, we've just included a couple of examples. Okay, so with the first citing, you see obviously the paraphrase, which is an important measure of whether a patient has received quality care can be demonstrated by patient satisfaction. Okay, we have 3 authors, followed by the year of publication, end bracket, full stop. Okay, however, once this source is used again within the same response, you will notice that just the first author is used followed by et al, full stop, bracket, comma, year of publication, end bracket, full stop. Okay? Okay, what about secondary sources? Okay, and this can be a little bit confusing, so pay close attention. Okay, so secondary sources can be a little bit confusing to explain. Basically, what this means is, say you are reading a book or a website that is designed by Gibb, okay? And while you're reading that, you find a quote by another author or a paraphrase by another author that you would like to use in your writing. Now, you then need to cite both of these to acknowledge that you have used one source, but within that source you found another bit of information that you would like to use. So, what that means is, in your reference, you first write the surname of the author who wrote the original words or quote or paraphrase that you are taking, okay, followed by the author of the source that you were reading, and then the year of publication. Okay, so for example, you can see that Bion has been used here, but Bion was originally cited in the work of Gibb. Okay, so in order to make note of that, you put as cited in Gibb, and then the year of publication. Okay, now that is obviously the example if you choose to make reference to the author by name at the beginning of your sentence. Now, if you don't want to do that, then you present the information as you would. Most groups aim to be functional, but sometimes underlying assumptions interfere with this aim. You then have the original source in which the information came from, which is Bion, and he was cited by Gibb in 2008. Okay, so 2008 refers to Gibb's work. Okay, end bracket, full stop. All right, now this can be a little bit confusing. All right, so if you're a bit unsure about it, be sure you ask your teacher to explain it or go through a couple of examples with you. Now, what is important to note, when you are then going to use this particular source in your reference list, you only need to include the source that you're reading. Okay, so from that example, it was Gibb. Okay, because that was a source that you accessed. Okay, you did not access the original work by Bion. Okay, you just found their writing within your source. Okay, which was Gibb. Now, also be mindful that we don't want you to use quotes that are more than 40 words, okay? Purely because this does not really show your understanding of the information, okay? 40 words plus, you're essentially copying and pasting information, okay? Paraphrase it so that you are showing your understanding of the information. Okay, so that wraps up in-text citations for now. So we're going to move on to the list of references. Okay, so basically your list of references is just a list, obviously, that contains the bibliographic information for each of the sources that you cite in your information. Okay, now be mindful that you don't just dump anything that you've ever accessed, okay? You do not need to include this in your reference list unless you have made reference to it in your writing, okay? So this is where your reference list and your in-text citations talk to one another, okay? So if you've paraphrased something or you've directly quoted something, then you need to list that source in your reference list, okay? Now, the formatting of your reference list is really, really important, okay? But in order to do it correctly, you first need to identify the type of resource that it is, okay? So is it a book or is it a website? What is it? Okay, now for this particular task, Miss and I have kept it rather simple in focusing purely on books, websites, or newspaper articles. Okay, but if you have found another source, then you need to let us know so we can sit down and show you how to reference that correctly. Okay, now we've included a table in your assessment task notification, okay, but it is also within this short video, so you can pause it and look at it if need be. Okay, so here is the example of the table I was talking about. All right, in order for you to understand how to read it, firstly, you can notice here that we are looking at books. Okay, in the first column, we've got in-text citations. Okay, so how to reference these within your text. Okay, that basically goes over what we were already talking about. But then on the far right column, we're looking at how to put this into your reference list. Okay, so use the left column obviously for assistance, but we're going to focus on the right hand column for now. Okay, so if you are citing a book, all right, firstly what you need to do is list the author's names. Okay, and you are listing these the way they appear on the book cover. All right, so not alphabetically, but the way they appear. So within this reference, you can see that it says nation, comma, capital I, full stop, capital S, full stop, capital P, full stop. All right, that it refers to all of the initials of that particular author. Okay, after the full stop, you have a comma, then and, McAllister as their last name, comma, capital J as their first name initial, full stop. Then in brackets, you have the year of publication, so 2010 in this case, followed by a full stop. The title of the work is in italics. Okay, so language curriculum design, full stop. We then go back to regular writing in stating the place that the work was published, so New York, followed by the publication company. Okay? Okay, so what about if you are referring to a secondary source? Okay, now remember, a secondary source is when you are citing something within another source. Okay, so when you're looking at the in-text citations, you've got the original author stubs as cited in the reference that you're looking at. Now, within your reference list, you're actually only including the reference that you accessed. So, Martin and White. Now, again, you will notice that we have the surname, all right, comma, the initials of the author, comma, and surname of the following author, White, comma, P, full stop, R, full stop, R, full stop. Okay, all their initials again. Followed by the year of publication, full stop, the language of evaluation, appraisal in English. Again, the title is in italics, followed by the place in which the work was published, and then the publication company. Alright, so you are not referring to stubs, okay, because they were referred to within the information that you accessed. Okay, now we also talked about the fact of having multiple authors, alright? So when you are looking at the reference list, you must include all of the authors, okay? So you can see here we have 3 authors, okay? Make sure you list all of them again the way they are listed on the cover of the book, okay? Followed by the year of publication, the title in italics, followed by the place in which it was published, then the publication company. Alright, now I know it can feel extremely overwhelming, alright, but it is quite simple. You just need to focus and you just need to edit your work. Alright, and use this table as your guide. Okay, now, what about if you use a newspaper article? Alright, this is where you'll start to note a difference in the way it's being referenced compared to a book. Okay, so for example, we have the author's name, same as the book. Alright, we then have the publication date, this time including the actual date, not just the year. Alright, end bracket, full stop. Emerging Eurozone mosaic, not a pretty picture. The title in this instance is not in italics because the paper name, so where the story was actually published, is in italics, followed by the page on which it appeared. Okay, so what about though if you've got a newspaper article that was retrieved online? Okay, you would do the exact same thing as the printed newspaper article, except instead of writing the page number, you will write retrieved from, and then you will copy and paste the internet URL right next to it. Okay? Now, what if you find a newspaper article that doesn't actually have an author's name? Okay? In this case, what you do is you just list the title of the article, alright, followed by the year in which it was published and the actual date, full stop, the title of the newspaper that it appeared in, followed by the page number. Okay, again, if you access this online rather than print, you do the exact same thing by having the title of the article, the publication date, the newspaper in which it appears in italics, but you write retrieved from and then insert the URL. Okay, so it's very, very similar in terms of newspaper articles, just slight differences, okay? But referring to a newspaper article is quite different to referencing a book. Alright, so the other source that you may refer to is from web sources, okay? Now, if you access firstly an online document, okay, so just a website, for example, you will firstly include the author's name, alright, same as you have been doing for the other references, followed by the publication date, or year, sorry, full stop. Language and intercultural communication problems. This is the title, again in italics, very similar to the book reference. And then you say retrieved from and insert the URL. Okay, much like accessing an online newspaper article. Okay, now what about if you refer to a video blog post? Okay, now this could be something from YouTube, for example, or if a video has been embedded on a website, okay, you will need to write the author's name or whoever published the video, alright, followed by the publication date, okay. Now the title of the work, notice, is not in italics, okay, not in italics. Alright, you then need to place in square brackets the fact that it is a video file. Okay, that you then need to follow that with the URL that the video was retrieved from. Okay, and you write retrieved from and then copy and paste the URL. Okay, now if you use a digital image, in your work, you also need to reference this as well. Okay, so in order to do that, you identify the author or title of the website in which it came from, followed by the year of publication. Okay, again, you have the title of the work not in italics, followed by square brackets identifying that it is a digital image, and then tell us where it was retrieved from by copying and pasting the URL. Okay, now I do realize that this may seem extremely overwhelming, especially if you have not done anything like this before, okay, but it is completely accessible. You can do it. It is quite easy. You just need to follow these simple rules, okay, and you've been provided with enough examples to do that. Also, your teachers are there to assist you if you have any questions. Okay, so here is an example of a reference list. Okay, you will notice that the word references is center aligned. Okay, we've got a capital R followed by lowercase for the rest of the letters. Make sure it is written like this. Okay, then you are going to go on to the next line, in which you are going to write the author's name, the publication date. Alright, notice how we have capital for Cooper, comma, capital G for the first name initial, full stop. Year of publication is in brackets, full stop. The Intelligent Student's Guide to Learning at School is the title, which is in italics, followed by a full stop. We have the place in which the work was published, followed by the publishing company, full stop. Okay, we then go on to the next one. Obviously, it's an internet source. We have Department of Education and Early Childhood Development as the title of the website. Okay, we also then have the title of the article, followed by square brackets identifying that this was in fact a fact sheet, retrieved from, then the URL, so we can get to it. Okay. Now we then have a newspaper article here. Alright, we have our authors. Obviously there is an error here in that it should be a capital J. Alright, we have our exact date of publication. Alright, our title is not in italics because it's a newspaper article, followed by the title of the newspaper in italics, retrieved from, and then the URL. Okay, so this is just an example of a reference list. You do have a copy of this. Follow it exactly. Okay, now also notice that this is a hanging indent. Okay, in order to get a hanging indent, you go into your Word document, you click on Format, then Paragraph, okay, and this will bring you up with this particular box. Okay, you then need to look at Special and click on the drop down menu and select Hanging. Okay, this will alter your work so that the second line is indented slightly. Okay, so just a couple of helpful hints. When you are writing your response and you refer to a source, it is a good idea to at least paste the author's name or the URL that you got that information from into brackets within your writing, just so that you can come back and edit it later. This helps you prevent yourself from losing your train of thought, but it also makes it easier when you get to the end of your essay and you have not cited anything and then you have to go back and find it. That is not fun, believe me. Okay, so just include these messy in-text citations while you're working. Okay, but what you then need to do once you are finished writing your essay, or at least feel that you have at this point, read back through your essay and highlight where you have used an in-text citation. Okay, you need to then identify whether it's a paraphrase or a quotation, because obviously if it's a paraphrase, you do not need to include a page or para number. Okay, but if it is a quotation, you do. Okay, and that's a really important difference to note. Okay, now you then also need to identify what type of source it is. Okay, so if it's a website or a book. Okay, books obviously are easier because you can include the author's name. Websites sometimes have the author's names, sometimes they don't. If the website does not have a particular author's name, then you use the title of the website in your citation. Okay, and it's important that for the first citation you use the entire name. Okay, and then in square brackets you can put the acronym if it has one. Okay, and then in the following citations you can use the acronym only if you wish. Okay, now while you're doing that, obviously have that table out in front of you so you can make sure that you have correctly referenced each of your sources. Okay, obviously as well, if you have major concerns, see your teacher and they will be able to assist you. Now once you have gone through that, please select all of your writing. Make sure it is set to Arial size 11 and is of 1.5 line spacing. Okay, but what about your reference list? How can you check to make sure that you've done this correctly? Alright, well, use the following checklist. Okay, firstly, begin by reading through each of your references. Go through and identify the type of source that it is, a website, book, etc. Because as you are now aware of, these are referenced in a different manner. Okay, so once you've identified that, go to the sample table that we went through together and check that you have cited it correctly. Okay, so have you used italics in the proper manner? Have you placed full stops and commas in the correct places? Okay, you will be picked up on these, so make sure it is done properly. Now, you then need to check the formatting of your reference list. Okay, so is the heading center aligned? Okay, does it have a capital R and then the remainder of the word is in lowercase? Have you used hanging indents for all of your sources? Are your reference lists entries in alphabetical order? Okay, also for any reference where you have cited a website or an electronic resource, you need to make sure that the URL is no longer underlined. So you will need to select it and then press the underline button in your font section on Word until it is removed. You also need to make sure that that is now turned black so your entire reference list looks the same. Okay, you also need to make sure that you have double spaced the reference list. So select all of your reference lists, okay, and then go up to line spacing and make sure it is set to 2. Alright, also have you used full organization names when there are not authors? Okay, so for example, the Department of Education and Training must appear as the Department of Education and Training, not abbreviated to DET. Okay, so make sure that that is correct. Again, you can check with your teacher and they will assist you if you're having any major problems. Before the due date though. Also, once you have gone through and corrected all of these, make sure that all of your writing is in Arial size 11 font. Okay, the only variation you can have to this is the heading references, in which you can bold or make a slightly bigger size 12 to 14 maximum. Okay guys, so that wraps up our APA referencing tutorial. I know at the moment you're probably feeling very jam-packed full of new ideas that you can't possibly think straight. It is a little bit difficult the first time you try this, okay, but if you return to this video, stop it, pause it, work through the checklist as I'm speaking, hopefully that will be really helpful to you. Okay, obviously you can see your teacher for additional assistance, but make sure that you have a copy of that reference table available to you at all times. Okay, good luck.